We're delighted to be here. Conor, my partner, I'm Stephen, and I'll give you a little bit of background about us before Conor brings you through our work. Conor and I go back to high school days, and we went on then after that to go to college together in the National College of Art and Design in Dublin. We went there in '79, and I finished in '83 and Conor finished in '84. Thereafter, we set up Design Factory in 1985, and we brought over a portfolio of work that is going to give you a snippet of what we've been doing from '85 to today and what we're going to be doing going further on. So with no more to do, I'm going to let Conor go through the presentation, and at the end, we're going to give ourselves 10 or 15 minutes for questions.
And answers, I hope. Can you hear me fine without the mic, just like this? Yeah. Okay. Okay, Design Factory, right? We were kids in art school in the early 80s, and we were all listening to records, bands like Joy Division, okay? And Factory Records was the label. And my girlfriend at the time said, why don't you call your design company Design Factory? So that's the depth of philosophy behind our name. Okay, so very deep. The other thing is that we spent 30 years or so avoiding using a factory for our logo. And then eventually we gave in. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is start with two jobs that we've just recently finished, and then I'm going to go back and then start going forward. I'm going to say nothing about these. Don't ask me what he's doing there, right? This is a company based in Dublin. They are a leading global provider of technical services to the video game industry. So they came to us, they wanted the brand. They're all over the world, they have all these sub-brands, so we had to build a strategy for that. So before we did any creative work, there was lots of consulting and talking to them about where you are, where you want to be, what your vision is, what your positioning is, all that. This next one is for the International Union for the Conservation of Nature. This is a gentler piece. Okay, so this was very nice for us because this came to us from Geneva in Switzerland, and this organization have drawn up a green list to protect all the national parks, the islands that are endangered by global warming, all the volatile kind of green areas in the world. So that they list them and then they take measures to protect them. And as you can see from the video, the identity had to work in several languages. There's lots more languages than that. These videos are only the tip of the iceberg of the actual work. Most of these would have involved strategy, the development of brand guidelines, consulting with all the various management people in the organizations. But Stephen and I didn't start out doing that kind of work. We grew into that kind of work. This is our place in the world. We're from Ireland. It's the little red place there. I hope you all know where it is. It's population of Ireland is about half the population of New York. So it's small, but we punch way above our weight, I think, in the world. There's about 40 million people in the States with connections to Ireland, third, fourth generation. And I think the Irish diaspora around the world is about 80 million. That's our city, Dublin, famously divided right down the middle by the River Liffey. And the posh people live over here, and the intelligent people all live over here. And the people who don't know what to do live along here, I think. Our studio used to be about there, and then we just recently moved back over here. Okay. That's our front door. We like the number, 77. Loads of good look. It's in Georgian Dublin, so it's got all these nice doorways. This was a really big moment for us when we were students. We were 21, 22 at the time. And this was the local Dublin magazine. It's called In Dublin. It's a bit like Time Out magazine.
Date down there, 1982.
1982, yeah. Anyway, we'd nothing to do with this, but it was very important to us because it was designed, the cover was designed by Milton Glaser, famous New York designer, okay? And Ireland was very isolated at that time. And we kind of thought, if this famous international designer can come to Dublin and make this cover, we have a chance to kind of go out into the world, okay? So it encouraged us, really. This was our first big job. We were still in college. It was the brand identity for the gas company in Dublin. And it involved vehicle livery like this, and it went through everything from form design. There was no internet back then, by the way. This is Trinity College, famous college in Dublin, and what's interesting about this photograph is how black the building looks. If you come to Dublin today, that building looks lovely in white. That's air pollution back in the 80s. So the building's been cleaned up several times. These guys, everybody know who these guys are? Okay. They emerged the same time as we did. And we used to go to their gigs, and we were friends with the photographer who took that photograph. But what we wanted to look at really is this stuff here. That's what Dublin kind of looked like back then.
You saw the picture of it earlier, the river running through the city. So that's the posh side of the city on the left side, and that's the intelligent side, this side.
So it was there was a recession there, and most of the young people when they left college, they left Ireland. They stayed, we stayed, and that's what we used to look like back then. Shocking, isn't it? That's me. That's Stephen. Stephen looked like a gangster back then, I think. But that photograph was taken by the same guy who took the photograph of you two, and he's continued to work with us. Everything we made back in those days was made by hand. The most complicated piece of technology we had was a Xerox machine and a typewriter. So all this early work was made by with very basic tools. This is for the German Film Club. We did a series of posters for the famous German film directors. But we couldn't afford the third color. And we had 300 posters for town, and they were all colored in with a yellow Pentel marker. So that's the way we used to work. The technology began to develop a bit more, and we started using photo typesetting. So we were pasting up these came back from the photo typesetting, you'd paste them up with cow gum. This was a poster for what was at the time a very controversial movie. It was a movie about a priest who had an affair with a woman. But that was made with letterpress, a bit of photo typesetting, some silkscreen printing. And then in 1987, we went to the World Design Congress in The Hague, and we saw our first Macintosh. We couldn't believe this machine. Then we bought one, and we looked at it for about 4 months and kind of touched it every now and again, and we liked the mistakes it made. So we made this poster in 1988, and that's the only thing we did on the Macintosh. We liked the bitmaps. The rest of it was all hand-painted, photo typesetting. This was made with paint, and then painted onto glass, and then pressed into watercolor paper. It was for a big German-Irish bilateral art exchange. And the idea behind the logo was very simple. We're going over there, they're coming over here. This was the research for the beginnings of the first piece of work we did that gave us any amount of kind of international recognition. We were asked to make an identity for a printing company, and the printer said, I want the identity to get across the idea of detail, that we can print anything at a large size and particularly at a small size. So we were influenced by some design work that was going on here in the States by a company called Duffy Design Group. And what they used to do is they look at old stamps and reuse them again for modern graphics. And we looked at the idea of airplanes and trains and ships as symbols of kind of technical innovation. And we were talking to the client, and he really liked this, the path to health. He saw that as the future of his company. So, mind you, this was after about a year of conversations. So literally what we did is we cut out the airplane and we stuck it on top of the background there, and we gave it to the client, and he said, yeah, I love it. So then what we did is we got it illustrated by a friend of ours, David Rooney. His name is going to come up a bit. And that was made by Scraperboard. You know what Scraperboard is? And then it was coloured in then on a machine called the Aesthetes computer, which was kind of pre-Mac, a big desktop computer about the size of your desk there, with about 3 screens on it. And it was used for the animation business. And the logo is full of personal jokes that are private to the printer. But what was nice about this is it got recognized by the New York Art Directors Club, and it got into the International Exhibition here in New York, and it got into their book, and we got an award, and it started building our name. We were doing local brands as well. This is a very famous tea brand in Dublin, and the same illustrator we used for these elements. And this is the last job we ever did for the tobacco industry. It was the first job we got for the tobacco industry. We were then offered another one to do cigarettes, and then we said, no, we don't want to do cigarettes. But what's nice about it is the kind of the attention to craft and the typography. I mean, that piece could easily be used today, I think.
These were still been designed in the 80s, the packaging that we're using there.
So there's no computers there, right? That's all handmade.
How did you get the typefaces?
We used a thing called Letraset. Did you ever hear Letraset? It was a kind of rub down. Or we would draw the typefaces ourselves, very large, and then reduce them down on a thing we had, which is called a repro camera. Which is called, where would you find the fonts?
Is there a library of fonts in it?
Yeah, you could type books or...
We would have come out of college where we would have been taught letterpress. And a lot of those classic fonts were there, but they were in the form of hot metal or wood. So you'd base your design on what you saw. So you'd redraw it at this size, you'd scale it down on the repro camera, and you cut your letters out individually with gum on the back of it, and you do your spacing that way. And then you'd shoot it again until you got the spacing exactly perfect. And that was used for your artwork.
Do you see this logo here, the 2FM? That was the logo for the National Rock and Pop Station. I made the drawing for that, and I'd say the drawing was probably as big as that screen there, and then it was photographed down. So all the logos on that page are all made by hand. Or there was another material we used to use. It was called Rubylith. It was like a red film, and you would take a scalpel blade and you would, in one go, you would try and draw the shape, and that would form the separation for the printing plate. This logo here that Stephen did for Irish Fertilizer Industries, see that shape there? That was drawn giant with a blade. These companies here, Windmill, Monroe Design, Filmmakers Ireland, these were all companies that were owned by U2. So we got a lot of work from U2 around that time.
And a lot of the work that we're doing here, we didn't have access to what you guys have, so your research was very limited. You didn't press a button and find out what the competition were doing. That wasn't there.
You used to read
so
books.
You had to really work hard at finding out what your client was looking for and get that right then when you went to the market with it.
Okay, this was a big moment for Ireland as well as for us. This is Mary Robinson. She was the first woman president of Ireland. She was elected in 1990. We've had 2 women presidents. How many have you had? You're still working on it, are you? Fantastic woman. Later, after she was president, she was ambassador to the United Nations. But the arrival of Mary Robinson and the kind of change of culture in Ireland seemed to coincide with us getting a lot of national brands to do. So this was in 1991, Dublin was designated the European Capital of Culture. And our strategy to get this job was that we would give them a freebie. So we said, we'll do the logo for you for free, so long as you give us total creative freedom for everything else once we get to roll it out. So we kind of went in with a reasonably conservative kind of heraldic type symbol there. That's the River Liffey there. There's kind of a lino cut. But then we took total creative freedom for everything else. So this is the program cover. I'm just going to fly through these. And these are early experiments with the Macintosh. We were just learning the Macintosh. All this kind of stuff. We had great fun doing this because the client had no comeback because they said we had total creative freedom, so we just did what we liked.
Did you also do it by hand?
No, this is all Mac work.
There was a little bit of the work that was been done there, yes, was by hand, you're right.
This bit here.
The illustration in the middle was all made up on a board like this, photographed using what you've got inside with your facilities, and then mixed. The computer still at that day, in the Apple days, wasn't up to doing all the scanning that you can do with it now. So it was a mixture between the two, overlaying type from the Apple and using conventional photographing 3D pieces.
We were using really old programs like Cricut Draw and Paint Maker and things like that.
Page Maker. All gone.
None of them exist anymore. Oh, the computer we had, by the way, was black and white only. The first Mac we had was just black and white. And it was about that size. It was a useless machine, really. Then we got this fantastic opportunity from the Dutch post office, PTT Netherlands, which are a great European patron of graphic design and have been since the 1930s. But they created this special project that would celebrate the opening of the European Union. So they invited one designer from each European country to design one of their stamps for that particular year. So we got to represent Ireland, and designers like Neville Brody would have done the UK stamp, and Eric Spiekerman would have done the German stamp. So we were in great company. The subject they gave us was called Numismatics, which is the history of money, and the history of Dutch money in particular. So this lady here her name is Juno Moneta. She's the goddess of money, so we used her to kind of represent money. And these symbols here are the alchemical symbols for silver, nickel, and gold, which are the 3 materials that were used to make the coins in the Netherlands. But what was exciting about that for us was that 12 million of these stamps were printed, which was a very big print run for us. And then as a result of that, then, this was typical Ireland. You see, we'd never designed a stamp before, and the Irish post office didn't have the confidence to give us a job. So when we got the job from the Netherlands, they said, okay, then you can design a stamp. So this book, Stephen designed, which contained lots of postage stamps from that particular year, was all about Irish maritime history. So we got into book design. And then the Irish Post Office said, you can do some stamps for us. This was a series we did called The Planets. And it was about the 4 gas giants. Don't ask me to try and remember them now, but I know that Jupiter is one of them because it's there. And the problem with the stamp was that we had to, this image of Jupiter here and then Earth didn't represent the scale of the situation. So I had to come up with a little idea to show that. So if you look at that gold disc, that's the size of Jupiter, and the tiny little white dot is the size of Earth in comparison to Jupiter. And that Jupiter thing there is the Irish language there with the little accent over the U. All national projects in Ireland have to be in English and in Irish, in the Gaelic. Then we got invited to take part in the competition to design the euro coin, and there were 20 design companies invited, and we won the Irish competition. And again, this is old technology. So these were made as giant plaster cast models about this size, like this one here in particular.
This is all around the 90s now, the latter part of the 90s, the work you're seeing.
Mid 90s, I would say. So that is so a large plaster cast model was made, and then all the detail was. We designed it graphically, and then it was a specialist sculpted out the actual design, and then it was photographed down to actual size to give the impression of the coins. Anyway, we won the Irish competition, but we didn't win the overall competition. The winning coins were made by an Austrian designer. Then we got the gig to do the identity for the Irish Museum of Modern Art, which also opened in the early 90s. This is a fantastic gallery in a place called the Royal Hospital Kilmainham in Dublin, which is an old military hospital, but they converted the whole thing into a modern art gallery. Quick story about that. We completely screwed up leading up to the presentation, and we arrived in, I think it was a Thursday morning, into work, and we had our presentation at 12 midday. We got our dates mixed up, and we had no work done. And the City Council of Dublin had just bought this very expensive painting, and it was white on white. And it cost the city at the time like $40,000 or something like, which was at that time an outrageous amount of money. And everybody was giving out about this white on white painting. So we said, okay, that's our idea for the identity for this gallery. So we just got an A4 sheet of paper, and we just cut out a small little white square, stuck it on it, and then we went to the presentation with that. And all the other design groups were there with their boards and everything. They were all fussing about the place, and we went in with our sheet of paper, and we got the gig. And it was the emperor's new clothes, because the board of directors of the gallery were all looking at this white square, and they all saw different things in the square. And we just went, yeah, that's right, you're right. Oh, you're absolutely right. So eventually what we did is we stuck a very nice photograph, that's an old slide now, of the archways of the Royal Hospital Kilmainham into the square, and this minimal typography here. And then this was a big moment for us. This is Graphis magazine, which is based here in New York. They decided that they wanted to do an article about our studio, which was a huge thing. This is all before the internet. So for us to get into this magazine was a real big deal. So these are all the small steps that gave us a bit of recognition beyond our own shores. I want you to take note of the mullet that I have there going on. And Stephen's shirt.
Take note, I had some hair.
This lady here, her name is Shanna Phillips. She's from Denmark. We set up a studio with her in 1988 called Design Factory AS Copenhagen. And she specialized in packaging technology, which we didn't do. So we had great collaborations with her over the years. Anyway, the other thing to take note of is the article is written by a man called Bill Bulger. Remember that name? He was the head of the Department of Graphic Design in our college. So these are various spreads from the thing. This is the identity for Irish rail. That's Irish and that's rail. I seem to remember when I used to watch westerns when I was a kid that the Native American Indians used to call the railway Iron Road. We always thought that looked like Iron Road. Anyway, forget that. Okay, so we did brand guidelines, and we did modeling of the trains, and then this is how it looked on the trains. And we did timetables, and we did big project.
And for a young company, they were still picking up awards. I picked up a lovely award in the Brunel Awards for transport in Europe for best in category for design back then. We were quite a young studio, so it was a great honour to get that.
This was a very influential exhibition that was on in Dublin. It was called Irish Country Posters. Basically, the story is this German professor came to Ireland, and he drove around the country in a little van, and he collected all the posters from all over the country that were made in letterpress. It may have been for a dance in a library, or a political event in a village or whatever. He took all the posters and he stuck them into a gallery in Trinity College, and he made this exhibition called Irish Country Posters. And it took a German man to come to Ireland to show us how beautiful our posters were. But at that time he called into Design Factory and we were working on this. And we were convinced that this was cutting edge European design, like the stuff that was going on in Germany, the Netherlands and all that. And we were really trying hard to make sure that it was of that ilk. And he said, no, this looks totally Irish to me. The use of the blue colours, the soft colours, the use of the spiral, he said totally Irish. And we were really disappointed because we didn't want to be Irish that time. We wanted to be continental, European, contemporary, modernist designers. But it's funny that it takes somebody else to kind of to say that to you. National Gallery of Ireland, we did the identity for that. The National Symphony Orchestra, the only indigenous instrument in the Irish orchestra is the harp, so that's why it became the symbol. The Royal Institute of the Architects of Ireland, their gallery, the Architecture Centre. The International, Irish Crafts International, this was for an exhibition of Irish crafts going to Cologne in Germany. A lot of design in Ireland is based on craft. If you ask most people in Ireland what does design mean, they'll say pottery, they'll say furniture design, they'll say glass, they'll say fashion. They won't say graphic design. So we've always been fighting our corner on that level. This was for the National Botanic Gardens. We got a gold medal for this in the Design Awards. This was when we started working with ICAD, which is the Institute for Creative Advertising and Design. And we invited New York designer and illustrator Seymour Quast to come to Dublin and do an exhibition of his steel sculptures. And he was also a judge on the ICAD. He was the international design judge that year on the ICAD Awards. This is a nice letter he sent to us saying that he enjoyed his visit and blah, 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 and we kept it. Because, you know, when you live on a small island and somebody from New York writes you a letter and says they had you keep it. You frame it. We were 10 years in business then at this stage, so we did a book about that. It's called Design Factory Celebrate 10. And we put none of our work into the brochure. It was all the idea of 10 green bottles, 10 fingers on your hands, Pelé's number 10 shirt.
Size 10 shoe, whatever we could come up with that had 10.
They're my son's hands.
Pantone 10, Who 10,
Pantone 10, etc., etc. Anyway, it did well. It did well in design awards and things. Then we moved to a new studio. We started, we had some money and we were able to put some money into our studio. We were creating a, like what you have here, we're trying to create a nice design atmosphere. And then we started getting work for big Irish brands like Guinness. They asked us to make a sign for the Irish Film Centre. And they gave us this piece. And then we gave them the eyebrow. So we just said, okay, visual arts, film, a neon eyebrow is perfect for that. This was a promotional package for getting designers from London to come to Ireland and use Irish packaging companies. So on a Friday night after work, I would say to Stephen normally, I'd say, are you going for a pint? A normal thing to say. So what we said here was, are you going for a print? And it's done in the same typeface as Guinness, so it's kind of a little bit confusing. And then you open it up and you get a little brochure, and there you have Bono here. He's magnificent magenta, and then I think the Virgin Mary was cyan, all kind of Irish cliches. And then you get a voucher to go to the top of the Guinness storehouse and you get a free pint of Guinness. So that was the promotion. This was a very special limited edition whiskey we did for Bailey's. You've heard of Bailey's Irish Cream Liqueur. This was a special edition we did for Bailey's Irish whiskey. And we broke kind of new ground in terms of bottle packaging technology. We were the first company, certainly in Ireland, to use that kind of frosted glass type of effect on the whiskey. We commissioned a very famous Irish painter to do the watercolour. And we commissioned Seamus Heaney, who is a very famous Irish poet. He won the Nobel Prize for Poetry, to do the poem on the bottle. There's the artwork for that. All the time we were doing branding and identity. I think at this stage they they called it corporate identity. When we started out, it was called house style. At this stage, marketeers were calling it corporate identity.
We knew how to use the computer at this stage.
So these are all, yeah, a lot of these would be generated on the computer. I like that logo. It's for, you probably can't read it, it's top right there, that one. It's a logo for a foreign exchange solutions company called Beacon. And it was great fun because we went away for a month and came back with our presentation, which is like a tiny white dot, which is what a beacon is.
The one below is interesting, Pembroke. They lease airplanes. So that's the 4 windows in an airplane, just underneath it.
That's a kind of a modern interpretation of the Irish harp for our National Treasury office. Anyway, we could be here all day talking about those. Then we started writing our own books about branding and what branding was about. So this is called Branded by Design Factory, and we would hand these out to the industry. We got involved in retail design. That's a convenience store in Dublin. At that time, doing typography like that and photography like that for a convenience store was very, very unusual. So we had to come up with the name of the store fresh. We did all the graphics. We also did all the interiors and the retail design, packaging. The Architecture Centre came back to us, the RAI, and we rebranded them as a Centre for Architecture. And we created the Architecture Gallery and the Architecture Bookshop. And then financial services people came to us. This is Chartered Accountants Ireland. We got a gig to redesign the Observer magazine, which is a magazine about economics, which is based in Paris. So we do that 6 times a year in French and in English. So we had a lot of commercial work on, and we were very busy. But we always had a policy in the studio of stopping to smell the roses. So we would get fed up doing commercial work. Okay, it's making money. So we would stop and we would give our designers something to do away from the commercial projects. So every Friday I used to give them a copy line. And then they had to come back with a poster, designed and printed and delivered back to me within 2 weeks. So this one here was learn the rules and then break them. The restrictions were that they had to use the same typeface and they had to use our logo, but after that they could do whatever they liked. And then this is see music, hear design. We enjoy this one because unique solutions come from ignoring the obvious. That would sum up our philosophy about design in lots of ways, but this is the poster that the designer came back with. It was kind of a hangman thing. And we like this one too. When you don't have an idea, all you have left is style. So everybody's idea of what style is different. Style could be sandals and socks, I don't know. Around that time then we were trying to get a book published, and the book was about the relationship between Dutch design and Irish design. And we had gone to 10 publishers in Ireland. They rejected the idea. Everybody rejected the idea. So then we said, okay. We flew to Amsterdam and we went to a publisher in Amsterdam, and I brought the book over to the publisher. And the first thing he said to me was, "You're the guy who's sending me all those crazy posters, the ones I've just shown you." So they do work. People remember that type of thing. This is the book. It was called Orange and Green, so we made it pink and blue. And it's all about the relationship between Dutch design and Irish design, which goes back to the 1950s. I can talk to you about that in more detail later. This is a book about paper. We were invited to make a book promoting paper from a company called Tiraeus. And the idea we came up with, Stephen came up with the idea, was that he would invite all the top photographers in Dublin to interpret paper in their own way. So we made a special book and an exhibition. So these are some of the spreads. And they all got little paper stamps at the end, which they could send into the paper company, which would allow them to get more paper samples. Another big moment was the economic boom came to Dublin, and everybody started making buildings. So we started getting lots of work for architects. This is Libeskind, who did your World Trade Center. He came over here to Dublin and he made our national concert theatre. So we had to do brochures, and we had to get his consent about the design. So we were dealing with starchitects all of a sudden. And people like Winnie Mass from MVRDV came over, and we started doing stuff like this. This is a famous building in Dublin. It's a bank centre, which is based on the Seagram building here in New York. Mies van der Rohe, who was born yesterday in 1886. How did I remember that?
And we call the building in honour of him Mesian Plaza.
Yeah. So we did all the logos and the signage and everything to do with that, and all the brochures and the web. We do a lot of web and digital work as well.
I thought all the buildings were based on that one.
Say again?
I thought all the buildings were based on this.
You could be right. You could be right. This is just a little thing we did for a local Irish architectural firm who specialise in healthcare and hospitality. So we do their website, we do their videos, we do their signage, it's a custom font, we did their posters. We went back to hand-drawn lettering again, actually, and then we used these elements as kind of graphics in their promotional posters. More branding, but this is we came to see this thing up here, Pegasus Capital Advisors. They're a New York company. We came to New York for a week with our portfolio, like students again. It was strange. We went to 4 meetings a day, up and down buildings, making presentations. And we went back to Dublin, and we got a job from a company that we never met, from New York. So how did that happen? We have no idea how that happened, but they're a big capital advisory company here in New York. This section I'm going to call soul food. This is where we just do things for ourselves. So what we did was because of our connections with the Netherlands, we created this thing called Double Dutch, where we invited a young design company and an old design company from the Netherlands to come over to Dublin every year and make talks and do an exhibition and do workshops. So this is the first one we did, 2004, and it was 2 companies called Tonic and Una. So they came to Dublin, and we had a fantastic time with them. And then the following year, we had two companies, Koviden Postma and Kessels Kramer, very innovative companies, but completely different. That's my son, Harry, there, looking really pissed off. The idea is that the Dutch had arrived on the shore, so my friend gave him a Dutch football jersey, and he just, okay. And the third year then, this is a famous designer from the Netherlands. His name is Anton Baker. He's the kind of enfant terrible of European poster design. And the fat bloke there in the poster is me, and the arm there is Stephen. And this mask was made by a famous Dutch designer. His name is Jan Van Eyck Academie. He's one of the guys who came to Ireland in the 1950s. And that mask is called Typeface, and it's from the National Print Museum. The next thing we did, we're always coming up with new things to keep ourselves amused. We opened a design gallery then. It was called the Factory Space. And we did lots of exhibitions with international designers from all over the world. And this is probably the exhibition that we enjoyed the most. Reza Abedini, he's from Iran. He's an incredible graphic designer. And we did a festival of cultural diversity with Reza. But for the typography, we mixed Old Gaelic typography with Arabic, Farsi typefaces. We came up with this kind of unique typographic approach. A job for a furniture manufacturer in the west of Ireland. He said his factory was really ugly, so we said, okay, take all the furniture out of the factory and we photograph it in the landscape. That's the bar. We like that one. It's an old stone wall in the west of Ireland. We just stuck the pints of Guinness on the wall, and a few stools, and we made the bar. The copywriter who worked on that job asked us to make a business card for him, and his name is Mel. So on the front of the business card, we put his name, Mel, and on the back of the card, we put loads of different words that started with Mel. So melodrama, meltability, meltdown, that really is reflective of him. Melodic, melter, melange. Anyway, we've got lots of awards for that. This is our New Year's card from 2007. We really like typography. We always bring typography into what we do. So this was printed on Bible paper. It was really, really thin. It was like maybe 40 grams. All of a sudden, we were 25 years in business. So this is the book we made which was published in the Netherlands because we had this good relationship with the people who did the Orange and Green book. And that's, the title is Design Factory on the Edge of Europe. We always feel we're on the edge of Europe. This is we commissioned this photograph. That's the coast of County Clare.
It's the west coast of Ireland. After that, you arrive in the States.
Yeah.
Nothing but the Atlantic between the two.
This is some of the work. This is for the largest private hospital in Dublin, which is connections back to the nuns. There's a long story there. I won't go into that. International Orphan Aid, which is a big charity for orphan aid. This did really well for us in terms of design awards. It got into the Icograda World Identity Design Awards, and it was printed in their book. And then Stephen and myself got invited to take part in an exhibition in Milan, and we were given themes. And my one was about football in Africa. So A is for Africa. So I made the A kick the full stop or the period, and then it's the A playing football. And Stephen's was more about Greenpeace and the plight of the whale and all of that. So they got exhibited in Milan, which was great. And then back to Dublin again for more work with big brands. This is with the Jameson, which is the famous whiskey brand, and they're the sponsors of the Dublin Film Festival. So this is some of the stuff we do for them. The next clip I just want to show it to you because there's some famous people holding a brochure that we made. That's the only reason. It's complete vanity. That's it. We do all our own motion graphics and our videos, everything in-house. So not just graphic design, we have all the digital capability as well. The Dubline is a brand we came up with for a discovery trail in Dublin that connects all the old historical buildings along the river together. And we did everything there. We did brand strategy, the identity, the brand guidelines, the website, the advertising for the Dubline around the city. And I want you to remember that U2 cover. Yeah, do you remember the U2 cover earlier on? Do you remember I showed you all the old buildings? Well, that's what they look like now. The whole city's completely changed now. And we've got star architects coming over. That bridge is designed by the famous Spanish architect Santiago Calatrava. This will just show you the route of the Dubline as it goes through the city. This is the identity we did for the National College of Art and Design in Dublin. To make a long story short, the college is situated, the campus is on the site of the old Irish whiskey distillers, Powers Irish Whiskey. So it's a very old building. And when we were making the identity, we wanted to connect to the fabric of the building. And we found these stencils that were used back in 1874, which were used to mark the barrels in the cooperage in the building. So we use that as the kind of the basis of the identity. You can see the original stencils that we found there. This is the cooperage. And this is the man who originally found the stencils and set them aside. I found them in the library in a plastic bag 30 years after he set them aside. And his name was Bill, so we named the typeface Bill after him. He's the guy who wrote the Graphis article we showed you earlier on. And this became the identity for the National College. So annual report covers, posters, gallery. Irish design is very rooted in craft. This is a friend of ours who is a furniture designer. He works in oak. That's more Irish craft that we commissioned for a big office building. This is a book we made when we were 30 years in business, and we weren't quite sure whether it was 29 or 30 or 31, so we called it 30-ish. And it was made, the cover is made in letterpress, and it's stitched along the side, and the inside is printed litho. And you remember that story about Seymour Quast, the New York designer? Well, was the first guy to respond to our call to interpret 30. So that's his little 30 there. We commissioned 30 designers from around the world to do the job. Irish stamps about musical instruments, Irish music to do with old Irish things like the St. Bridget's Cross. It's an old Christian pagan symbol. Album sleeves about the famine. Local theatres.
Marv is a town where you can look at it on the surface and you can think there's nothing going on here.
I really like that. I like her blatant honesty. Nothing goes on here. But anyway, do you know Marfa? Okay, Marfa is a tiny little town in West Texas, and for some completely strange reason, we got invited to make an identity for an art gallery there. But Marfa actually is very famous because a New York sculptor, Donald Judd, went there in the 70s because he found big spaces to make big work. And he bought all the buildings over there, and it's now called the Chinati Foundation. It's dedicated to Donald Judd. This is our connection to Marfa. It's a friend of ours who got asked out to do an artist in residency program there for 4 months. And he worked in this building. It's called Building 98, and it's an old cavalry fort building. And it's got an amazing history. I need another few hours to tell you the history. But anyway, we were asked to make an identity for the building. And because a lot of the sculpture that's in the area is very big and robust and so forth, we decided to make the logo for the building based on the plan of the building. So that's the plan of the building on the left, and that's the logo on the right. So this is the logo, right? And the owners of the building have connections to Chile and wanted the typography to have something to do with Chile. So this is a free font by a very small type foundry based in Santiago in Chile. And the font is called Latina Essential. And it's a free font. You can get it on the computer thing. But all kinds of crazy stuff happening in Marfa. That's a Prada shop in the middle of nowhere. It's great, isn't it? You can't shop there. You can just look at it. That's an art piece. These are some of the postcards we made for Building 98. We commissioned a local photographer down there, just beautiful work. This is a poster. And then we made a sculpture of the logo in 3D. We always had that idea that we would make it in wood, because the idea is that for the opening of the grand opening of this gallery, I think it's next year, a full-scale metal sculpture will be made in the desert, and we'll have flames and all this kind of stuff going on. But the connection to our new venture is this piece of wood, because this piece of wood was made by a graduate of GMIT Furniture College, which is in the west of Ireland in the middle of nowhere. We really got interested in places that are in the middle of nowhere, where things happen. Nice dog. This is a statement about Marfa that we really like. It says, tough to get to, tougher to explain, but when you get there, you get it. And that's, our summer school is like that. It's really hard to get to, but when you get there, you get it. So this is where our summer school is going to be. This is Connemara National Park, which is on the west coast of Ireland. And it's in a place called Connemara. Did you ever hear of Connemara? And that's the road through the mountains to the village of Letterfrack, where the furniture college is. So that's where we're going to have our summer school. I have to drive around that coast every time I go down to the village. That's a famous mountain range called the 12 Bends of Connemara. And when you get to the village, it's overlooked by this mountain. It's called Diamond Hill. That's a friend of mine up there having a good time. And if you look at that little white building down there, just down there in the valley, that's the college campus. Beautiful place, and it's beautiful islands and everything like that. That's the ad we did for the summer school, which takes place this summer, last week of June, first week of July. It's a multidisciplinary summer school. It's open to architects, UX designers, fashion designers, writers, anybody who's interested in creativity, adventure and fun effectively. This is the campus, which is down in the village and it's looking back up at the mountain, Diamond Hill. And this is an award-winning campus by O'Donnell and Toomey architects. They're actually world-famous architects now. And they made these incredible workshops for the Furniture College. They really are. The photograph doesn't do these workshops any justice. When you walk in, it's just amazing. So once we got this collaboration going with GMIT Furniture College, we started thinking about the types of international designers that we wanted to work with us in the college. And this is the story of the logo. We did a sketch of the mountain from memory, Diamond Hill, and then that became the identity. Website. This is the road through the mountains again. Posters. This is Untitled Design from Dublin. We collaborated with these guys on this project. This is some of their work. Just to give you a flavour of more design from Dublin. This is Ken Deegan. He teaches typography here at the School of Visual Arts. He's an associate partner in Pentagram, New York, and he used to work for us, and he's going to teach in the summer school with us. Some of his work. This is R2 Design from Porto in Portugal, and they specialize in environmental typography, macro typography like this. Big scale stuff in the landscape. This is a project they did called Futuro, which they did in Seoul in Korea for the big international biennale of typography. It's called Futuro, but if you look at their work, they start off in 2 dimensions and they start working through 3 dimensions. So if you follow this sequence of images, you can see Futuro. They're politically motivated people. They were very upset about Brexit and this whole Brexit thing, the UK leaving Europe. So they did this intervention at a big massive dam on the Douro River, which is on the Spanish-Portuguese border. And it says U equals EU. It's a big kind of art statement. We're also going to have this guy. His name is Isidro Ferrer. He's a highly celebrated graphic designer and illustrator from Barcelona in Spain. And he used to work in the theatre in Barcelona, and then he had an accident. And he couldn't work in theatre anymore, but he became a graphic designer for the theatre. And he works in 3 dimensions. This is the connection back to the Furniture College. A lot of what he does, he makes in wood, and then he photographs it. This is called Funny Farm. It's really nice. They're little wooden sculptures that he made for lamp standards. I'm going to go over time because this video is really nice. This is Isidro talking about his work. He doesn't speak one word of English. So there's subtitles, but I want you to see this because he's a really passionate man, and we're so happy to have him working with us. So let's just watch this.
Me llamo Isidro Ferrer y soy un diseñador por devoración. Devoración es un término imposible que mezcla 2 palabras. Devorar, que es comer con mucho apetito, y adoración, que es trabajar apasionadamente. Vivo en una ciudad pequeña, una ciudad del norte de España, cerca de un entorno natural que facilita la relación con el trabajo y facilita la relación con el entorno y con el paisaje. Y esto me permite seleccionar mucho aquellas cosas que hago y seleccionarlas en función no de la rentabilidad económica, sino de la rentabilidad emocional. Trabajo fundamentalmente para El mercado cultural, mucho cartel, mucha vinculación con el teatro y también trabajos que tienen que ver con la edición, pero con una manera particular de ver la edición, libros que a mí me gusta realizar de forma personal y luego me gusta mucho picotear de distintas cosas, probar distintos territorios de actuación. Mi método es un antimétodo. No construyo en función de una metodología clara, sino que el azar, de alguna manera, dejo que el azar intervenga en el proceso del trabajo. Juego con los procesos, entonces dejo que pasen. Antes he hablado de la invitación, soy un invitado al diseño. Una línea continua en el discurso que tiene que ver con todas las formas de entender la comunicación periféricas, no única y exclusivamente desde el diseño gráfico.
So yeah, Isidro's going to be with us at Design West. He does workshops all over the world, and he has an interpreter. So don't worry about that. But apparently, when you work with him, because he does speak, he's not speaking English, the engagement is that much better, in fact. So that's the team for Design West, and that's it. Thank you. So if anybody wants to know about Design West, you can ask us some questions. I suppose the central theme of the summer school is design unplugged. We all lead very busy lives. There's always deadlines, there's always pressures, there's always the internet, there's always noise. So when you go to this place, while you're in the campus, the connectivity is fantastic, it's got great Wi-Fi and all that, but once you step outside the campus, you can't even get a phone signal. We really like that. So you can just switch off. So the idea is that in the morning, we have our workshops with Isidro, or2, us, Unthink. And then we use the idea of walking as research in the afternoon. So we're going to be visiting islands, climbing mountains, going to local villages, visiting food producers, musicians, artists, all of that kind of thing. And at the end, we're going to make an exhibition. There won't be so much briefs, there'll be themes, pathways you can work with, but there'll be no rules. It will be accredited, but you can effectively do what you like. And that's the plan. There seems to be a bit of a movement about this, people want to slow down, and they want to take stock and think about what it was that made them want to be a designer in the first place. And if you're always working to deadlines, I mean, you have to do that in life, but sometimes it's good to just stop and smell the roses and just kind of reflect on why you did it in the first place. And when you're away from the city and the noise of the city, and you've got the total attention of that group of designers, there's so much you can gain from the experience, I think, you know.
But we're also mixing people. It's not a case that it's a design course. It can be somebody who's an architect. In fact, similar story there is that man Marty who went to Marfa. He was a big advertising executive and worked with some of the biggest agencies in Europe. And a point came where his salary was bigger than the job, and he was moved out of it. He was given his watch. And at that time he was trying to find out, what am I going to do now that I've been given the watch? And he got that gig to go out to Marfa, and he found himself, and he started to be creative in other ways. And it's a bit like what we do. We spend all our life looking at a machine, trying to get answers for our clients. Well, we need to step back from that and find out what we want to do for ourselves and how we want to see it. And by meeting people from different practices and different principles and gaining friendships, you come back with a different view on how you're going to approach your work, with fresh ideas and new ideas. And at this point in our career, Conor and I both want to spend more time doing that. and sharing our thoughts, our ideas, and what we've experienced through our career as designers, and meet other people that bring fresh thoughts, fresh ideas, and it improves design all round after that.
There's some very nice pubs down there. I like the Guinness down there. 2 weeks down there just doing that, great.
Very healthy. It's very, very healthy.
Is it different from the Guinness elsewhere in the country?
Oh yes, you've got to go there.
It's magical.
It's real Guinness.
No, it doesn't change.
Guinness is very nice in Ireland. Once you go outside Ireland, Guinness, it's not the same.
You have to experience it in Ireland. We're using our own water sources. They have brewing in Africa and other places, but it's quite special in Ireland. It actually tastes better because you're drinking it there. It's a bit like a serious bud drinker. They'll say, no, it doesn't taste great bud in Ireland. I'm going to drink it in the States. Yeah.
It doesn't taste great here either. But.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about is it an application process? How many people, deadlines, things like that?
Okay, the deadline for applications is the 20th of April. And all you have to do is go to the application form, which is there somewhere, and you've got two options. You can just put your online portfolio, link to your Behance or whatever, or a PDF of your work. But then it's up to individuals to decide what more they want to give. Some of the more interesting applications I got recently are people have written about why they want to be there and what they expect to get back from it. You don't have to do that, but so you have to, each application is a personal decision, but the application form is very simple. Numbers-wise? We're looking at 24, 25 people, so.
Open to all ages.
All ages, all disciplines, all creeds, all persuasions. It's going to be fun. I would say it'll do you no harm to apply anyway.
It's also important to know that you'll be looked after from beginning to end. Accommodation will be supplied.
The fee includes accommodation.
You're not having to worry about getting it off an airplane and finding yourself over to this very barren place in the west of Ireland. Mm-hmm. You'll be well looked after along the way. Okay, the fee. What does it include? You get your tuition with all these amazing designers. You get your accommodation. You get your accreditation. You're invited to an opening ceremony meal and a closing ceremony meal. You have to look after yourself in between. You get all your field trips and your excursions. So you get a lot. So that's it. Anybody more questions about anything outside of design? You can ask questions about Irish design if you like. Or the prices, everything that is in there that you need to know is on the website. And any questions that you want to throw over to us, you can do that. Yeah. We're not too far away. Oh, yeah. Just tap a note in. My email address is on this leaflet, so if you have questions about the summer school, you can just ask.
Any other questions? Yeah. I have a question about, at some point you pointed out that you had gone back to doing things by hand for one of the logos.
Yeah.
I'm just curious to know about what was it about the computer that didn't allow you to just do it with a computer? Why did you need to go back to the hand?
Because that's the way I was trained.
Okay.
And also the song, your head is connected to your neck and your neck is connected to your arm and your hand. I feel things better by working with my hands, I think. This guy, Isidro, if you want to look up Isidro Ferrer on YouTube, there's a few different videos about him, but he completely refuses to work with computers in the early stages of his work, and he's one of the most celebrated designers in the world. He says he's analog. I'm an analog man, you know. We came across his work when we were walking over to Trinity College for our lunch, and we went into the Spanish Institute, and his work was up on the wall. And this was the first time we'd seen it live, and both of us just were wowed by it. And wowed from the point of view, it was refreshing because he was working the way we started
because there was no computer. And to see the results of what he mixes between adding a little bit of flavour from the computer to what he makes with his hands gives it a beautiful personality that's hard to achieve by jumping into the computer. And for us, that was very, very inspiring, and it drove us to.
Don't get us wrong. We're not anti-computer. We work with computers all the time. And Isidro himself is a very competent typographer. He works with the computer, but he adds a dimension to his work by working with his hands. There's a humanity, there's a touch and feel to his work that you don't necessarily get from flat computer work. But it's different strokes for different folks. It's, you know what I mean? We're not expecting people to go to the summer school and turn into Isidro Ferrer. You know what I mean? You're there for yourself to do your own work. You know, you're there to talk to these people and to be influenced by these people, but not to become them. You have to find your own voice. That's the most important thing.
What do you think about the state of mainstream graphic design today, or how do you sort of like or dislike the art that it's taken, like leaning into
It's an interesting,
very simple vectors and stuff like that?
it's a very interesting question, because there is one aspect of what's going on that kind of frustrates us a little bit, and it's called Pinterest. I think everything on Pinterest looks the same. And I think if that's your only reservoir for research, your work is going to look the same as everything else on Pinterest. I hate Google Images as well. You just go on and just go, it's easy. I need to see what a three-legged orange duck looks like, so it comes up and then there's your duck. Do you know what I mean? I think people should slow down. I think they should.
Stock photography, it's so easy to tap into that, but it's so much better to work with a photographer. In that way, we have to spend, with the work that we do, we have to find and source the photographer that is suitable for the job. You won't get it out of Shutterstock. So we tend to use several different photographers, depending on the brief and what we want to deliver. Then we talk to them, sit them down and work away. So the majority of our photography that we tend to use, especially when we have the budget to do it, there are sometimes restrictions. We will outsource and buy in photography, writing, all of those areas we bring as third party.
But at the same time, it's never been a better time to be a designer. I mean, Pinterest is just one aspect, you know what I mean? There's incredible graphic design going on. There's incredible product design going on. I mean,
walking into this college, you can see it all around.
I mean,
it's
School of Visual
superb.
Arts, whatever. I mean, it's an incredibly exciting time to be a designer. But I just think that sometimes it's good to stop and reflect and kind of think about why you want to do it and why you wanted to do it in the first place. And if you're going at 200 miles an hour all the time, it's hard to actually to do that. I think Milton Glaser, who the guy who did the In Dublin cover from back in 1982, I think he personally admitted at one time that he reached a kind of a burnout point, and he took a year off and he went off to Italy to do nothing in particular except drink wine and absorb all the beautiful architecture, and then he came back totally refreshed. And so it works for people. Stefan Sagmeister, you know, the German designer, he does that. He just takes time. He went off to Thailand for a year. Came back refreshed.
Conor, can I go off for a year next week?
Yeah. It's good. Sometimes it's good to just kind of
it's super
change
off
the gears
a little bit and see what's happening around you.
But I don't know. You guys are the future. I don't know where design is going to go next. So you're going to make the future. So we're very interested to see what you're going to do.
It'd be very interesting to come back, please God, in 25, 30 years and see what you guys have done in that time. See where we've travelled to, where we've got to. But it's a very, very, very inspiring, creative environment you're all in. And we wish you all well.
Have you ever been to Ireland? Anybody ever been to Ireland? No? Yeah? Great. Did you have a good time?
I had a fantastic time.
Great.
I was 9 years old.
Great.
So beautiful. Yeah.
Come back?
No Guinness. So.
Yeah. No, we don't force Guinness on 9-year-olds.
You guys can stick around a little bit if students want to speak to you individually.
Sure,
Fine,
we're here. Yeah.
fine.
Many thanks.
Thank you.
You're welcome.